The presentation is going to give you today is largely based on a performance that is given through a number of years, 2 years I think, at the Edinburgh Festival. A sell-out show, no doubt, at the Edinburgh Festival. Dave, as well as being a comedian, and as you'll see, has another sideline I won't mention yet, but you'll all become clear shortly. He also is a teacher. Dave's been recently teaching in prisons, creative writing, comedy, these sort of things as well. So he's a very talented man. But I'm really pleased he's come in to do this. He did it for us a few years ago. And actually it was probably the impetus for the Edinburgh show in many ways. And the impetus for what's going to be a film about this story that will be coming out in the new year. So I'm delighted that Dave's come in and agreed to do this for us. It ties into what you've been talking about, because it involves copyright, intellectual property rights more generally. And it's really around the power relations and the way in which sometimes larger companies can exact their power, or try to exact their power over people lower down the chain, and how that can be resisted. So it's a story of intellectual property, but also about resistance, I think. So I'm delighted to welcome Dave Griffiths.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the applause. Started at the back there, very nice. Don't usually get that. So I'm going to speak to you. This is a show that I wrote in regards to a legal battle that I had over 15 years with a particular company. And it's called See You in Court. And there's intro music for me to come on, which you can hear briefly. Okay? So this would normally happen. Please take a seat. Have you logged in and that thing said thank you to you? Yes, good. All right. I wondered what that thank you was. So this is called See You in Court, and it's about my fight with a company, and you may know this company, French Connection. Do you know the shop French Connection? And do you know what nationality it is? It's actually English, which is the first of the hypocrisies of this legal case. And this show can basically be summed up as Canuck versus Vercuck. Vercuck, you know. Canuck, I will explain, but that is me, all right? And I'll explain a bit more on that. And this is a picture of myself about 15 years ago, just for my legal battle. And I was very keen on funny T-shirts when I was at school. I wasn't one of the cool kids at school, and the way I sort of dealt with, you know, being awkward. I mean, I was at an all-boys school, and the instrument I chose in all wisdom to play was the flute. And the sport that I was best at was the triple jump, which everybody said was skipping. So the way I kind of got round things was to be a sort of funny kid. And if there were any, I saw a lot of bullying at school, and it was a very weird situation where people lower down would be bullied, and then they get to the next year, and then they bullied a year below, and it just carried on. And everybody thought I was really odd because I'd always interfere in these fights and try and negotiate, going, it's obvious who's going to win. Everybody thought I was very weird. But people kind of left me alone because I wore these comedy T-shirts. This was one of my favourites. I wore this for about 5 years, Ignore This Person, which I thought was hilarious at the time. My father didn't stand on my left-hand side for about 5 years. And I then went on, did really well in education, got an HND in tourism, ended up working in a travel agency, and this is where my sort of feeling of what big corporations are about and sort of injustices within big corporations. And while I was working at the travel agent, there was a robbery, and for some reason I ran after this robber, wrestled him down, and I received a bravery award, amazingly, for bringing him down. I saved the company £25,000, which sprayed out onto the pavement when I wrestled him down. And everybody was like, God, that's brilliant. All my friends lived around where I was working in a really hardcore place called Henley-on-Thames, so the robber wasn't as hard as you might think. And they were going, you've done a really great thing. People at work were like, you've done a really great thing. And I was thinking, I feel like maybe I have done a great thing. And then I got a letter from the company called 80 Mays, which has been taken over by Thompson, massive corporation. And the letter said, "Dear Mr. Griffiths, you should not have left the office." That's how the letter started, because apparently I wasn't insured once I'd gone out that door. Not, "Thank you very much for saving us £25." And I began to think, the wheels turn on these companies. They don't really have an understanding or empathy for people. They just do things automatically. And this was a letter from one of their lawyers. And it was sort of protecting themselves. Instead of going, "Well done," whatever, they could have put this at the end. But no, the first thing that it said was, "You should not have left the office." And I began to think, how do these companies work? Why are they so insensitive? And yet all their marketing is like, "We love you. We miss you." But in fact, they don't give a damn about you very often. So after my experience there, I went on to do some brilliant gigs. As a comedian, I got some comedy out of the robbery and everything else, and I started to do 5 minutes round the country. And I noticed that one of my slides is in the wrong position. And this is the thing about this show, is that you won't understand how I've actually achieved what I achieve. And I'm just going to flick through this. Don't look, all right? Close your eyes for a second. We're going to come back to this. And while I was going to a gig up north, I saw this poster, in the very first French Connection poster. It said FC UK. It was on a massive billboard. And I thought, my God, they can put fuck right in your face. It is unbelievable. They are, that's what it's saying. And it's like, Jesus. I was like absolutely shocked. And it wasn't just a swear, a word that looks like a swear word. French Connection had a whole campaign about this that was so much more. And it said, this was their public relations, it said, "The brand which dares not speak its name," this is for cuck, "the tone of voice is subversive, tongue-in-cheek, anti-establishment, anti-fashion victim, and above all, unafraid to laugh at itself. Anyone who knows for cuck will get it. They, the cool, will inform the slow." That sounds like a Nazi cry to me. The cool will inform the slow. It's a play on a swear word. And it's not really laughing at itself, because it's a massive R, registered trademark. It's not anti-establishment, it's absolutely set in law. And anyway, while I was with a friend going up to this gig, and I turned to my friend and I went, "That'd be so much funnier if it said CNUT. And we laughed so much more than you did just then. And he said, "What, Knut?" And I went, "Yeah, wouldn't that be funnier than FC UK?" And he went, "That's brilliant. That's really good. You should get a t-shirt made and go to your next gig with that t-shirt on." And I was like, "Really? That's never going to work." And he went, "No, that's the first poster that anybody has seen of that FC UK design. You should wear a t-shirt and come on stage, and I bet you it gets a big laugh." And I was like, "Oh, God, all right, I'll give it a go." So my next gig was my first 10 minutes at the Comedy Store, okay? And I turned up on stage with this exact t-shirt, and it said, "Knut," and I'd put an extra little joke, "French correction." And I got the biggest round of applause and laughter I'd ever had in my entire life. It was the best gig I ever had for the first 10 seconds. The rest of the gig, I died horribly. But the t-shirt went down really well, and I was wishing I just had a load of those t-shirts to wear on that gig. And I came off stage, and one of the other comedians went, "I'd really like to buy one of those t-shirts." And I went, No, it's just a mick tape, of that brand, FC UK. He went, No, I think it's really good. I'd like to buy it." And I went, "Really?" I went, "You don't have to buy it. I'll just give you one." I was just pleased that someone wanted it. And I came off stage, was going home, and people came up and go, "Where did you get that t-shirt?" I said, "I just made it." They said, "I'd like to buy it." And I went, No, it's just a mick tape. I'm just taking the mick out of that FC UK. Anyway, I thought about it, and I went and did another couple of gigs with this t-shirt, doing brilliantly with my T-shirt terribly in my comedy, and people were coming up, and I was like, oh my God. So I thought, right, I'm going to make some, and I might sell a few. And also, I will need to extend my range. And so I produced a second T-shirt, which I thought was the obvious second favourite, and it had Wanaka. So I had 2 lines to my branding T-shirt store, and I also bought FrenchCorrection.net. I tried to buy .com, but that was already a French translation site. So I had FrenchCorrection.net, and I put Knut, Wanaka, and Wanak on the website. Now, 2 weeks later, I was doing really well with my T-shirts. I received a letter that looked like this, and this may be something that you lot have all seen. This is called a cease and desist letter, and I'm going to bring out the highlights. Please come and sit down. Make sure you say thank you on that thing. And this is from a company called Davenport Lyons, okay? And Davenport Lyons are huge lawyers. They have offices, this many offices around the world. They have 116 offices and 5,000 lawyers. And you know what? Every single one of them was a Knut. And they look after huge organisations like HSBC, Standard Chartered Bank, RBS, I mean, massive. I mean, the list goes down rapidly, Daily Mirror and Daily Express. But they look after all these huge companies. And I was thinking, what is this company that's coming after me? It was quite scary. And it was written and signed by Davenport Lyons, but 40 people had put their names to that letter. And I was like, my God, all these people are involved in this case. What is going on? I didn't understand. I have an HND in tourism, but I started to investigate trademark law. And what was incredible was there were all these, what I thought, 40 people all involved in this letter. And in the first line, they'd made a terrible mistake. They had put, our client's advertising budget for the UK alone exceeds £3.5 per annum. And I was like, my God, my advertising budget is twice as much as theirs. I couldn't believe it. They totally missed that. And then they put, it has recently come to our attention that you are operating a website named French Correction, advertising, selling T-shirts featuring slogans with the wordplay such as Knut and Wanaka, clearly influenced by Fakuk. Yep, they got it. They understood the whole situation, and there wasn't one little bit of humour in this for them. And then they wanted me to do a load of work for them. They put, within 7 days, the date of this letter, to provide an exhaustive list of the number sold, number manufactured, the cost price, the retail price, the identity of the designer of the T-shirt, the manufacturer of the T-shirt, and the identity of all retail outlets and other locations from which T-shirts are sold, to make sensible proposals to compensate our client for the harm caused by your activities, to pay our client's legal costs. Where do you start with all that? It was just like, my God. And what's with the 7 days? I was useless at keeping on time. And I discovered that if I didn't write within the 7 days, nothing happens. They just write you another letter. So I kept this going for quite a bit. So let's have a look what I had to provide. The number sold, well, it had been a really good 2 weeks. I'd sold 3 at the Comedy Store. I'd sold 4 at Late Night Comedy. I'd sold 5 at Pear Shaped. In all, in those 2 weeks, I'd sold 17 T-shirts. Thank you very much. Yeah. I think I'd sold 7 Wanakas and 10 Knuts. And the number manufactured, I'd only had 20 manufactured, so I'd done really well in a business sense. I'd sold almost 90% of the T-shirt. The cost price, it cost me £10 to have that T-shirt made, and the other ones. The retail price was £18, so I was getting quite a good return. The identity of the designer of the T-shirt, they were giving me compliments. They were calling me a designer for this. They've got pretty low standards, I was thinking. Oh my God. I mean, if you know anybody that's dyslexic, you go, no, you're not dyslexic, you're a designer. All right, so We had that, the identity, I was beginning to feel good about myself. The manufacturer of the T-shirt, well, to be honest, I didn't know every name of the child that had made that T-shirt. I didn't know. I hadn't got a clue. The identity of all retail outlets of other locations from which T-shirts are sold. I was living at my mum's. I had to put my bedroom. And do you think she would be pleased if they came along and taped off my bedroom, not allowing me to go in and manufacture these T-shirts? To make sensible proposals to compensate our client for the harm caused by our activities. This is unbelievable. I'd sold 17 T-shirts. I hadn't realised how much damage I'd done that £340 million company. I mean, it was like I was the Goliath and they were the little underdog. I was obviously causing them enormous harm. And to pay our clients' legal costs. Fuck off! You sent me one letter! What legal costs are there? It's like, that's what they try and do. They try and scare you into just stopping straight away. And then they get a little more serious. It said, your website states that Canuck and Wanaka are registered trademarks, but our inquiries have shown that they are not in fact registered trademarks. You should be aware it is a criminal offence. That means I could go to prison. Do you think I would do well in prison? I mean, I don't even think at night playing the flute, making them go to sleep would get me in favour, or triple jumping around the yard. I don't think that would help my time in prison. But in fact, they had made another mistake, because I had trademarked Canuck, because a friend of mine said, once you've got that letter, trademark it, because obviously they're gonna, the next thing they're going to do is try and take it from you. And Wanaka, admittedly, I hadn't trademarked, I had put TM after it. And I started to look up trademark law, and in fact, TM means nothing in law. Only an R with a circle means anything. So they were just trying to scare. There was no criminal offence in any of what I had done. And then finally, after all these threats, all these trying to get you to pay and getting the costs in your head and worrying you, at the end of the letter, they put, we look forward to hearing from you. It's like a complete, really? Oh my God. So I was like, this is unbelievable. I didn't even really know French Connection. I started going into the shop, started looking around their stuff. I started to sign up for their newsletter, sign up for their brochure, see what they were all about, and I started, as I say, investigating trademark law. And then I decided to write back to French Connections lawyers, Davenport Lyons, and I wrote, Dear Graham, Jonathan, Kevin, Lawrence, Ron, Robert, Jeffrey, Philip, Stephen, Alan, John, Malin. I didn't leave off one of those names on the letters. Thank you for your letter, and I'm delighted to hear your advertising budget is £3.5 per annum. As you have noticed, my logos are word plays on commonly used swear words, also in common usage. Often when somebody swears, they may say, pardon my French. Hence the name of my website. It is very unlikely anybody would mistakenly go to French Correction instead of French Connection, as the two R's are at the top left of the QWERTY keyboard and the two N's at the bottom right of the QWERTY keyboard. They seriously underestimated how much time a comedian has on his hands. There is no mention of Facuc or French Connection on my site, and in fact, with such a small advertising budget, it's a surprise I have heard of you at all. I trust this puts an end to the matter. I look forward to hearing from you. Yes, they threatened me with court. But it was like, it just seemed absolutely crazy. I thought, they don't own French Correction, they don't own Canuck. And then I researched French Connection, and do you know when French Connection was actually formed? It was 1972, and do you know which film won the Best Picture Oscar in 1972, 3 months before French Connection was formed? The French Connection, the film, okay? And someone shouted out the Italian Job at one of my gigs. I was like, yeah, you haven't been listening to the show. So the French Connection was a film. And it was like, that to me was incredible. They've stolen the whole identity of their company. Their boss, the owner, admitted in a newspaper article that he had taken the name French Connection because it was his favourite film. So he had stolen that name And he was saying that I had copied and stolen their idea with Knut. And I was getting more and more infuriated about this. And I was starting to dig further in it. And I was beginning to do less and less comedy and more investigation into trademark law. But then a friend of mine, he said, who was a lawyer, he said, in fact, excuse my handkerchief, I'll never survive in prison if I have to use a handkerchief. And he said, in fact, the Knut and the combination of French correction, they could argue this for years to come. And I was like, but they don't own French correction. If they wanted French correction, they should get correction. And they don't own France, and they don't own French, and they copied French. I had all these things, and he was like, yeah. But to be honest, all you'll be doing is paperwork, going backwards and forwards, trying to justify, and that's all you're going to be doing. I would think about changing the French correction. And so he was also a history major, and he said, did you know there's a king called King Canute? Do you know King Canute, anybody? There's a nod there. He was the king of England in 1016. He came over from Denmark, he was a Viking, invaded England and Wales, and became king. And he lived in a place called Knutsford, okay? And he was known, if you look him up, and it's his 1000th year anniversary now, and he was known for going down to the sea and trying to stop the waves. Okay, that's what he's best known for. He was trying to prove that he wasn't a god and he couldn't stop the waves, but history had it that he was a fool and he tried to stop the waves because he thought he was so powerful. But in fact, the story was the opposite. But as with history, the better story is that he got soaking wet and he was an idiot. But we were taught in school that his name was spelled C-A-N-U-T-E, Canute. But that is the phonetic spelling, the English phonetic spelling. That is how you pronounce it. In fact, his real name was spelled C-N-U-T. And I reckon that we changed the name from Knut to Canute because everybody kept calling him King Cunt. Okay? I mean, it's just a theory, but just to prove my point, I found this homework where a child has made this exact mistake. You can see loads of these examples on Instagram or on Twitter. King Cunt invaded England from Normandy, and this was the only one that I could find where the teacher hadn't actually scratched out the offending word and put the correct spelling up above. It was probably a Montessori school, and they were like, yeah, that's all right, that's a word, just don't use it at home. But that's the real spelling. So that proves my point that we changed his name for that reason. So, while all this is going on, I'd forgotten I'd signed up for French Connection's brochure. And I'm having a battle with them. They know I'm having a battle with them, and yet, of course, they're still sending me their brochure because I might still buy something. The wheels are turning. They don't care if they think you're going to buy, whether you're being sued or you're suing them. Doesn't matter as long as you're buying from them. And then I saw in the brochure, I couldn't believe it, I saw a T-shirt that looked like this. Can anybody see what logo that looks like? Ford, thank you very much. And I was like, they're doing me for CNUT when they got a T-shirt that's got FCUK in the Ford logo. I couldn't believe it. So out of the kindness of my heart, I phoned Ford. I told them about this terrible infringement that was going on, and Ford looked at it and they went, my God, you're absolutely right. That is our logo in that. But French Connection are quite cool, and they were quite cool at the time, and they have loads of lawyers. We have loads of lawyers. This is going to cost a fortune. Until I said, well, it looks to me like it says, fuck Ford. Within a week, every single T-shirt of Ford's was removed from every shop round the world. And and I knew this because I was going into French Connection shops every other day to go and check. And they were dispersed. And then the next brochure came up and I couldn't believe my eyes. It was a T-shirt that looked like this and this. Can you see what logo that looks like? Pepsi Cola. Out of the kindness of my heart. I phoned Pepsi in New York. They didn't need telling Pepsi drink Coke. I tell you, they didn't need telling. They've already got enough of a competition between another company. And so they were absolutely livid, immediately took action. And I know they took action because not only was I going into the shops, but several months later there was some press about this, and someone wrote to me from French Connection that worked in French Connection, and he sent me this email. He said, "Dear Dave, I was working in the high street chain store in New York at the time, selling a lot of a particular Foucault product. These new logo t-shirts were very popular, so I was surprised when I went into work one day and was asked to remove all of these logo t-shirts from the shop floor. From the shelves, I was shown an urgent memo from head office explaining that they had been withdrawn. Much to the annoyance of our customers, we removed all the t-shirts. We had to tell them that they had been withdrawn because they were faulty. Occasionally one would pop up in another part of the store. Our manager was livid. He said something along the lines of, 'Get those for-cucking t-shirts out of this for-cucking store. I don't care if you for-cucking burn them. Just get rid of them.' I did think this was something of an overreaction. Until he told me that someone had gone into another one of the stores, mystery shopper style, and asked for this certain t-shirt. Unfortunately, the member of staff he spoke to had just come on shift, not been fully briefed, and duly fetched one from the stockroom. This mystery shopper was from Pepsi Cola, and this little error cost our store somewhere in the region of £70,000. I was beginning to feel a little better about myself. So I was just like, this was all I was doing. I couldn't believe it. I was just researching trademark law. I was going to shops. My comedy was going out the window. I was pretty much on the phone to companies, and then another brochure turned up. I couldn't believe it. It's a bit difficult to see that. Can you see what brand that looks similar to? Mars. Out of the kindness of my heart, I phoned Mars and they said, it's a Mars a day, not a fuck a day. They knew their logos. They were absolutely livid and immediately had the Mars for Cut t-shirt withdrawn. And the weird thing is, I wasn't quite sure how I was doing this, but at the same time, I began to feel like an army general. So we had I had done a mick take of the French Connection t-shirt, and then with the French correction, and then French Connection had got their 5,000 lawyers to come back and push me back, and then I'd managed to recruit some allies, and I'd just like to thank very much Mars for coming on my side, and Ford and pushing them back, and also Pepsi, who came all the way from America, bit late, but they still saved the day. And yeah, I was beginning to feel a bit better about myself, and I was thinking, I've really got to get back to my comedy because I was doing nothing else. But I could not stop finding infringements. I could not believe the audacity, the hypocrisy, the double standards. I saw this one. Yeah, James Bond. Can you see a logo? IBM. For Cola. They're just adding bits now. They're not even making sense. For Cola. I mean, that doesn't even make anything, but at least they're having a go at Coca-Cola and Pepsi. I thought, well, that's an even odds. Phoned. The next one's a weird one. Yeah, Kentucky Fried Chicken. And that's actually their actual logo. Kentucky Fried Chicken UK. So they've actually copied their actual brand. That is not just an infringement, it's actually stealing their brand. And so I phoned Kentucky Fried Chicken. I asked for the top man, Colonel Sanders. And they said he's dead. And I said, oh, good, because I'm a vegetarian and he killed a lot of chickens. And they were in New York. And they said, what are you phoning about? And I said, oh, I'm phoning about these T-shirts that are infringing. It's quite hard to explain. And they said, well, we'll put you through to the right department. So I got through to their trademark department, and they said, yeah, Pepsi Cola. And I went, I think I've been put through. Somehow I've got through to Pepsi Cola. They said, what are you phoning about? I said, well, I'm phoning about an infringement on the Kentucky Fried Chicken logo. And they said, oh, yeah, we own Kentucky Fried Chicken. I went, you won't believe what has happened. They got done twice by Pepsi Cola. Jack Daniels. And this is a weird one. What do you think it is? Big Mac, yes. Burger King, I phoned Burger King, they told me to phone Wimpy. This is Wimpy and McDonald's, so I phoned both, had it withdrawn. And so this was all I was doing now. I was getting absolutely outraged. And then the best day of my life came along because they had infringed on one of my favourite bands. They had infringed on AC/DC with For Cuck in Black. And I was like, oh my God, it's unbelievable. These guys have worked from the bottom down. They've done gigs in places like University of Westminster to small crowds, and people have spread the word saying how damn good that show was, and now they're playing at the O2. Okay? So that's a hint, all right, yes. And then I phoned them and I got through and I was thinking, yeah, they're just a small people, and French Connection are sitting their directors in their office, and they've gone, oh, how can we make some money today? Oh yeah, let's make some money out of that band that's taken 25 years to get to where they are and make a fortune. And I've always liked AC/DC because I've never, anybody on a personal point that can make millions of pounds with a song title like Let Me Put My Love Into You deserves all the credit that they can get. It's just unbelievable. So they had it immediately withdrawn. That was the AC/DC For Cuck t-shirt that was taken off the shelves. But they then went for an even harder, tougher band. Motorhead with Motor for Cuck. Again, doesn't make any sense. And honestly, I mean, they should have had me designing. They said I was a designer. I would have made a better t-shirt. Surely the better t-shirt is For Cuck Head. It's so much better than Motor for Cuck. It's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So I phoned Lemmy, God rest his soul. They were immediately withdrawn. They were so furious. And the thing is, this is kind of what non-capitalism looks like, okay? And this is what capitalism of a brand looks like. That. Yeah, with his very comfortable cardigan, he's really rock and roll. He's saying, fuck you, mum, fuck you. You know, that's the image compared to that of what they've done. Why anybody would buy that instead of that, I do not know. But I was just doing this, and I was getting more and more annoyed, and I thought, I'm going to have a go at French Connection. And this is not a trademark infringement. I started to sell T-shirts that said, it's spelt fuck, you stupid canut. This has no infringement on For Cuck whatsoever, and these started flying off the shelves. People really liked it. So I was selling the Wanack. I was selling, it's spelt fuck, you stupid canut, the canut. And I was also selling Posh Canut, because I live in Henley, and I did the Henley Regatta with Posh Canut, and it went down so badly, but it was a brilliant day, I can assure you. And so I had this little T-shirt company, and I was feeling quite good about things. And then I thought, I better get back to my comedy, I'm doing nothing else. But then word started to spread on the circuit that I was doing this, getting the better of a mega corporation. And an article turned up in the Daily Mirror. And this basically tells you everything that's happened so far in that little article. And kindly, Prince William was standing on the left-hand side of my article. If only he'd been wearing one of my T-shirts, I would be a millionaire by now. And then I got an article in the Times, okay, getting shirty. And French Connection were actually phoned for a quote. And they'd said, there's a lot of things I would like to say, but I don't think I should say any of them. A spokesman for French Connection said acidly. Surely the only job a spokesman has is to say something. It's just unbelievable. This whole secrecy about the brand that doesn't say, the spokesman that doesn't say, it's just absolutely ridiculous. But French Connection were beginning to find out who I was, and I saw one more T-shirt that I thought, this is going to break French Connection. And it looked like this. Okay, can you see what brand that is? Yeah, 20th Century For Cuck. And I thought, 20th Century Fox, this is great. This is going to break French Connection. Because not only have French Connection infringed on one of the biggest companies in the world, 20th Century Fox also made a film in 1972 called the French Connection. I thought, these are a double whammy, they're going to be absolutely livid. So, out of the kindness of my heart, I phoned 20th Century Fox, and they said, is that Dave Griffiths? Yes, it is. They said, are you phoning about that T-shirt with the 20th Century Verkackt of our 20th Century Fox? I said, yes, I am. They said, we're not going to play your game. We know what you're doing. You're wanting us to take on another big corporation for your benefit so you can get in the paper or whatever you're doing to get revenge for what's happened to you, and we're not going to play your game. And I was like, oh my God, they are not going to play my game. And they said, and French Connection, their models are fantastic. They are making us look good. And their T-shirts are good quality. They make us look good. We're quite happy for that because we're quite a boring company. And also, we've got thousands of lawyers, as you know. They've got thousands of lawyers. It's going to cause an absolute ruckus and going to take ages, going to cost a fortune. So we're going to do nothing. And I was like, oh my God, the one that I thought was going to break them is the one that isn't going to take any action. But I knew by now trademark law, and if one company allows another company to use their trademark without permission, and they don't do anything about it, it leaves the floodgates open for someone else to do an infringement of their logo. So I sent them a T-shirt that I said I was going to mass produce. And it looked like this, and this is my model that I sent them. That's Paul. Good friend of mine. It was the first time I had a call back. They went, oh, Mr. Griffiths, you know we said we weren't going to take any action. Well, thank you very much for putting us in touch with this case, and we will take action as soon as you take that picture off your website. We don't want you selling the T-shirts. And so French Connection, I had to twist their arm to take action. I mean, against French Connection. And 20th Century Fox, you know, it just seems incredible. If you and I did one little infringement like mine, whatever, they're on to you straight away. But another company, they have a big think about. And so I was like feeling, you know, reasonably good about the whole thing, but I was still going into French Connection shops. I was still phoning the companies. And then French Connection did something unbelievable. They stopped sending me my brochure. They took me off their email list. Have you ever heard of a company taking you off their email list voluntarily? It's like someone going, I'm just leaving the Scientology, and they go, yeah, see ya. All right. It just doesn't happen. Even when you unsubscribe, they don't take you off very often. So now I was off, and I was thinking, how I'm losing the intelligence of the company. I'm going to have to go into the shop more often. Then I thought, someone can help me. So I recruited my poor mother to sign up for the newsletter, for the brochure. She was now my inside woman, and she was passing me the information. And she was like, what is all this Verkackt and Knut? And I was like, oh, Mum, Verkackt is it stands for French Connection UK. Don't worry, it's an acronym. And then the Knut is, you know, the King of England, King of England. And she's like, oh, right. She said, what's going on? And I said, well, French Connection are trying to stop me. She went, what? They're completely different words. And I was like, yeah, Mum, you're on my side. That's great. You just keep there. So I had my mum involved now. And while all this is going on, I was just saying, I was phoning all these companies. And it's like, not that I get straight through to the trade department or the lawyers or whatever. It's exactly the same as when you speak to your bank, BT, Lloyds Bank or whatever. It's exactly the same. I have to go through the receptionist or someone else. Nobody knows who you have to talk to. I started recording the conversations because I realized when I phoned them, they said, your calls are being recorded for training purposes. And I was like, when am I going to speak to someone that isn't training? And then, this is a tip for you when you leave university. You can put on your CV any company that you phone that says, we're recording this call for training purposes. You have trained that company. They are using you to train them. So you phone BT and they say, we're recording this call for training purposes. You put, I train BT. Okay? And it's exactly the same. And I was like, they're recording me. And I found there's a loophole in the law. They're not allowed to record our calls without permission. But if they say it's for training purposes, they can record all your calls. And it's a way that they've got around the law. So I started to record theirs. And as I was saying, it's not Easy. This is, you may know this company, it's quite a big company. This is the call that I made was run like the cuck. And they turned their precious banana of night, the tick, into a banana. And they'd used the exact font of Nike, okay? So I became quite an expert at font. But explaining this to you with this t-shirt is one thing, okay? That's difficult enough. I've already made mistakes on that. But try doing it over the phone. It's something else. So I'm going to play you the call I made, and this is a typical call of what happened, where I'm speaking to a receptionist of Nike in America, trying to explain this t-shirt to her and who I need to speak to. And the worst thing I discovered about when I listened back to these calls is that I laugh at all my own jokes. So I'm just going to play you this Nike recording. And there's subtitles.
Hello, I was wondering if I could speak to the trademark department. Yeah.
And do you have a name for me?
As in my name or the name of the person I need to speak to?
Yeah.
I don't know the person you need to speak to, but my name is Dave Griffiths. Is that helpful? I didn't speak to him because the trademark lawyer would be bothered. Right. Any lawyer to do with Nike would be great. Or public relations.
Public?
Yeah.
But you know what it is? I hear myself. It's
I know it's a really weird question, but I'm sorry.
It's not weird, but there are so many people here that it's really difficult.
Right. Well, I just want to speak to someone who...
Can you tell me it's about what? Short?
Right. Well, there's been a definite infringement of the trademark of Nike.
Yeah.
And I've had a battle with, do you know a company called French Connection?
No.
It's a clothing company.
Okay, I know that, of course.
And they have the joke FCUK. Okay, and you know what that looks like?
Yeah.
Well, I have a joke, I'm a comedian, and I have another company that takes the mick out of French Connection, okay?
Yeah.
And instead of FCUK,
Yeah.
I have CNUT. Now, does that mean anything to you? Anything to you?
No, what is it?
Well, it's a... Barney, get out! Barney's out. The dog is in the... It's a rude word. It's a very rude word. I can't actually explain it. But in English in America, it's like one word ruder than, if I excuse my French, fuck. It's actually a ruder word.
Right, but you said C-N-U-T.
Yes.
That's nothing.
That means nothing, no. But if you change the letters and have C-U-N-T,
Oh.
you see.
The penny drops. So that's 2 minutes of a 20-minute conversation. And that's just for the receptionist. I have over 80 hours of recordings with these companies. It became a complete obsession, and people began to get very worried about what I was doing. But the injustice, the double standards was just getting to me. I couldn't believe it. And I thought, I've really got to stop. And I've got to get back to the comedy. But then I got a letter from a gentleman called Andrew Carter. And Andrew Carter had received a letter from Davenport Lions from 40 people we already were friends with. And he had produced a t-shirt called Fakek, the Irish connection. Okay? And he said, Dave, I've heard you're winning big against these companies. And I've got a cease and desist. Please, can you help me? And he's like, you know, you're obviously an expert at law. And I was like, God. And he's like, you're so successful. And I was thinking, lying on my bunk bed in my mum's house. Oh, yes, I've done really well out of this so far. And I said, all right, Andrew, because it had come to our attention, applied to register for Keck, the Irish Connection, as a trademark in the United Kingdom. And I said, all right, Andrew, with my HND in tourism, I will help you fight this. And so I wrote him a letter saying that things like, I started to investigate. French Connection do not own every single misspelled swear word, and they don't own every country from Andorra to Zimbabwe. There's no need to establish confusion. You simply have to show the relevant section of the public establishes a link between the trademark and the offending sign for the court to establish on the facts this link. TMs need to establish a likelihood of confusion and fool the public into believing there was a connection or an association with, as the EasyJet versus Easy Pizza case says, FC is not entitled to appropriate the word connection. So I started giving advice as if I was a lawyer. It was ridiculous. And loads of people started to write to me. It was about other things as well. And one of the most interesting ones was that I got a letter asking for help from PCUC, the Pony Club UK. They had taken a cease and desist on the Pony Club. That's not even a misspelled swear word. And yet they're trying their luck, their arm, at having a go at anybody that has rearranged letters. They also took action against FCUC, Conservative Future UK. They were the only people I didn't help. And I said, you can get on with that. So it was just ridiculous. It wasn't just swear words. It was like they were trying to appropriate everything. And so I was helping all these people. I was becoming a legal expert. And then I got a letter from a band called The Family Cat UK. And this was a rather disturbing, sad story in a way. The Family Cat UK were a band that were around in the Inspiral Carpets in the early 90s, and they had been quite successful, but unfortunately 40,000 of their records had been labelled wrong with a barcode. So they could have got to number one, but they didn't because another band got all the credit. So they never actually made much money. And they're wearing a T-shirt here on the left-hand side. They had a T-shirt. They made quite a lot of money out of the FC UK T-shirt they came off. Family Cat UK. They sold thousands of these. They had it on the backdrop. They got it on their records. And they had produced this 7 years before French Connection. Okay, and it was like, this is unbelievable. Hang on. You're saying you came up with FC UK first, and they had it in line as well, FC UK on their records and everything. And so the conspiracy theory in my mind is that not only have French Connection stolen the whole identity of their company from a film, they've also stolen the idea of the T-shirt from someone else. But it can't possibly be true. You know, it'd be too much. And I found out that Family Cat had been selling their T-shirts for 5 years, then had broken up and not been selling for 2 years, and almost to the day of their copyright finishing, which is 2 years if you haven't been selling, if someone else pumps a lot of money in, they can take your copyright. And within almost a day of that copyright running out, French Connection had trademarked FC UK and started pumping loads of money in. And I'd say this was a huge conspiracy theory, but one of the very first French Connection T-shirts looked like this. And it's very similar. So now I was fighting for Family Cat. I was fighting for Andrew Carter. I was fighting for the Pony Club UK. It was getting ridiculous. And what happens with brands is when French Connection, they try and carry on. They hadn't come up with any extra ideas, new ideas. They just try and flog a dead horse. It should have just lasted. The FCUC was funny for a couple of years. Should have just lasted for a couple of years. But no, 6, 7 years down the line, they're still producing. And you won't believe what they did to Dunkin' Donuts. They changed it to FCUcking Big Nuts. Okay, so they're not only changing the donut, they're changing Big Nuts. They're making it slightly more offensive. But don't worry, ladies, because they didn't leave you out. And they also did the women's version. FCUcking Big Tits. Can you believe this? And they're saying that my brand is offensive. I mean, it's just incredible, isn't it? That they have any morality at all. And the thing is that with brands, at the beginning, they were hiding the fact that it was FCUC, that it meant a swear word. It meant something else. But now they're making it blatantly clear. They're not using just FCUC, they're using FCUcking. And they produce T-shirts with people actually FCUcking on it. Okay, so now they're getting even further down the line. They're actually getting more and more desperate to sell T-shirts. And there are loads of these examples. And these T-shirts like FCUcking Big Tits, they're all very funny when they're in the shops and things, but they're not funny when your mum's wearing them. All right? It is not funny. It's appalling. So, you know, I was like, this is unbelievable. They're getting worse and worse. And then French Connection did something incredible. I went into French Connection store one day and I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw a T-shirt like this and it had Winac on it. And I thought, those fucking Canuts have stolen my Winac. I was selling Winac on my website. I had this T-shirt and I was like, my God, what can I do? This is outrageous. So I sent them a letter. I sent them exactly the same letter that they sent me, asking for, within 7 days of the letter, the number sold, number manufactured. And what annoyed them, I think, even more, is that I put at the end, Dave and his mum look forward to hearing from you. And to their credit, French Connection replied within the 7 days. They said, are you seriously suggesting that you have built up a substantial goodwill in the brand Winac with the alleged sale of 500 T-shirts? But they were worried. They had put registered marks for Cup, which they stole, and French Connection, which they stole, are clearly packaged as stuff. Given the substantial goodwill in those marks, it is inconceivable that there could be any confusion as to the origin of our Winac, which they stole. In any event, there are significant differences between your Winac and our clients. And it's interesting this because they're obviously worried because they're justifying what they've done. Now also, their lawyer, at the beginning of this, I was being written to by an associate, £150, £200 a letter. I'm now being written to by a partner. And the partner has replied to me like an angry teenager. It's quite incredible. The letters were changing. I was getting under their skin, seemingly. But justification was that this isn't my Winac, it's their Winac, because there's clearly a dot between the W, the N, the A, and the K. And they put this logo underneath, which I'd never seen before, and I know every single French Connection T-shirt by this point. And this was purely to protect the Winac. So I sent them a letter with a T-shirt that I said I was going to mass produce. Now, this may look like a French Connection T-shirt, but it's not. This is my FC UK T-shirt because there's clearly a dot between the F, the C, the U, and the K. And it's clearly made by King Canute, all right? I went into the shop a couple of days later, all the Winac T-shirts were gone. I've never seen one since. But as you know, it's blooming difficult to get any conversation. That wasn't my game. But it's a matter that if you want to take the companies to court, it's going to take you $10,000 just to take them to court. It's going to cost you $20,000 if you want to take them to court for compensation. So nobody ever does it, generally. But someone did have the money. He took French Connection to court because he said their brand, which had obviously become more and more obscene, he said every time I see a T-shirt with French Connection, and the irony of this whole show is that I am actually French Connection's best customer. I bought over £1,000 worth of French Connection T-shirts. They should be thanking me. And he said, every time I see Fuck, it clearly makes me see fuck. And that is their game. And with those T-shirts that were coming later on, they're making it clear that it is fuck. So I want that trademark taken off the register. And you can have a trademark taken off the register if it is seen as profane. And there was a court case. And weirdly, French Connection did something incredible. And there's a judge here called Judge Arnold QC. And he made a decision. Because French Connection, okay, they said in court, the first thing their barrister came on in court and said was, you're taking FC UK to court. But what about Canut? What about Winac? They're much worse than us, as if I was this huge business that anybody had seen, nobody had seen. They were using me as their defence, but it backfired because Judge Arnold QC made a decision in this court case. He said, in a decision made public yesterday, Judge Arnold QC compared the Fucut trademark with Canut. Canut was not a swear word, he said, and the Canut T-shirt makes reference to the Danish-born King Canute Swenson who ruled England from 1016 to 1035. The website displays the slogan, King Canute may not have been able to turn back the tide in 1016, but he does make exceedingly good T-shirts. And it was like, I got a recommendation in the High Court from a QC. And he'd infringed on the Mr. Kipling trademark, which is exceedingly good cakes. So it was a double winner. But it was like, he made a ruling that has worked for me, because he said, Knut is a historical character. Nobody can take Knut to court because it is a real person in the future. But for Cuck, if someone has a better case and proves that it is offensive, then it can be withdrawn from the register. So actually it worked for me. And then I sat down with some lawyers and with accountants and people that knew the business, and we worked out that I had probably cost, over the 15 years I've been fighting them, French Connection, about £3.5 million. And the moral of the story is that if they had just let this little kid who had a T-shirt dream alone, none of this would have happened. And the fact is that sometimes the mosquito is more aggravating than the other huge corporation. So I'm going to leave you with what has happened since, okay? There's just a minute of a montage of what's happened to French Connection and the other people that are in this, okay? And this is the song from Family Cat. I've just got one last thing, sorry, is that all right? And this month, there's been one more instance where French Connection, incredibly, I don't know, just produced this T-shirt, okay? Again, 15, 16 years later. So, out of the kindness of my heart, I phoned AC/DC again, phoned their lawyers. So this is an AC/DC code. They took their time, the lawyers. It took over 2 months, and I was getting more and more impatient. So I did something that I hadn't done before. So this is a French Connection T-shirt. I then, to speed up the process, I then produced, telling AC/DC that I was inspired by the FC UK T-shirt, not by the AC/DC T-shirt, to produce a CNUT T-shirt. I then produced and sent AC/DC a Forget T-shirt. I then produced a Percut T-shirt. I then produced a Wanak T-shirt. And I sent all these to the lead singer, Brian Johnson, on his birthday to say, thank you very much. I hope you don't mind that all these are being produced and nothing's been done about it. 2 days later, I received a letter from the lawyers at AC/DC. Thanks for contacting us about the French Connection T-shirts. I don't know if you've been tracking this issue, although I expect you have. French Connection have removed the Forgot T-shirts from your website. Whole process took a little longer than I hoped, but that's the way it goes with dealing with corporations spread over a couple of continents. Now we're taking care of French Connection, we would kindly ask you to stop selling Knut, Forget, Wanak, please, AC/DC. So that has happened recently. So it just doesn't stop. Okay, so that is it. And there's a documentary. And if you want to find any more details, just look up King Knut on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. It's all King Knut.